name is Dr. Bashaw, and I want to talk today about subjectivity, objectivity, and why we should abandon them. So I'm going to say a few words about subjectivity and objectivity, and then a few words about an alternative approach, and maybe a word about the nature of science, and maybe a word about the place of science in the core. So we start with subjectivity and objectivity. I do this in class, in every class. The first time some student either attacks or defends using the words subjective or objective. And my mission is to try to eliminate the use of these words and concepts. Because while, and I'm basically now just moving to a rant that I do with the students, while not totally useless, the subjective-objective dichotomy is so tragically flawed that we should really junk it and start all over again. Okay, so subjective. So I'll ask my students, what does subjective mean? And eventually, I'm fishing, someone will toss out, we'll use the word opinion. And I say, okay, so subjective is opinion. When we say something is subjective, we're saying it's a matter of opinion. You have your opinion, and he has his opinion, and she has her opinion, I have my opinion. It's just a matter of opinion, man. Nobody's opinion is better than anyone else's. Subjective. Okay, so that's subjective. Objective. What is objective? And again, I'll fish. And eventually someone will use the word fact. So, objective is about the facts. It's the facts, man. It's objective. You can't deny it. Okay? Subjective, objective. The subjective-objective dichotomy was developed by a group of philosophers in the beginning of the 20th century called logical positivists, many of whom were philosophers of science. And their goal was to divide all that we can think about and all that we can know into that about which we can actually have fact, we can have truth, we can have certainty, we can have answers, and that about which we can only have opinion. And then they then proceeded to put things like biology and chemistry and physics, the sciences, but also mathematics, into the objective camp, and then everything else, politics, religion, art, into the subjective camp. The basic problem with the subjective-objective dichotomy, and in the core, especially by week 2 or week 3 already, we should be, and certainly in later years, suspicious of any easy dichotomy. But the basic problem with the subjective-objective dichotomy is that at the end of the day, there's not a lot of stuff you can put in the objective side. And everything you can put in the objective side can only be known subjectively. To be human is to have a point of view, is to have a place from which you stand and see things. So, the basic problem with subjective and objective is there's not much you can put in objective. Let me propose an alternative. We'll replace the words subjective and objective with 3 other words, and we'll keep the word opinion and fact, but the words opinion and fact, but they're going to change a little bit. So instead of subjective and objective, plausibility, probability, and certainty. So, let's start with certainty. So I'll ask the students, what does it mean to say something is certain? What does certainty mean? And eventually, I'll steer them to the idea that something is certain if there is no possibility for doubting it, if there is no way that it cannot be true. Okay? And examples of certainty, of course, the classic, Descartes, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. It is actually impossible, without playing silly semantic games, to doubt your own existence. The question of what you are is another question entirely. But the fact that you exist, the mere act of thinking, proves, beyond any possibility of doubt, your own existence. Who knows what you are? You could be just a figment of my imagination. But the mere fact of thinking proves your own existence. So there's one thing. One example of certainty. Another example. Within the system of traditional arithmetics, 1 plus 1 equals 2. Within the system of traditional arithmetics, there is no other possible answer to the question, what is the sum of 1 and 1, than 2. Once you know what 1 means, and plus means, and equals means, and 2 means, that 2 is the only answer to that question. In Euclidean geometry, you can't have a triangle that has less or more than 3 sides, and so on. Certainty. Unfortunately, most of the things about which we can claim certainty lie in the realm of mathematics and logic. And beyond that, we move into shakier territory. So, let's jump to the opposite of this part. Plausibility. What does plausibility mean? So I ask the students. And eventually, steer them around, something is plausible if it's not impossible. So essentially, plausibility and possibility are synonyms. Something is plausible if it's not impossible. We don't know it to be true, but it might be true. We have no reasons to believe it's true, but we know that it's at least possible that it could be true. Plausibility. Between plausibility and certainty lies probability. And this is where most human claims to knowledge lie, somewhere between plausibility and certainty, in the realm of probability. And probability is by degrees. So something can be 99% probable, 75% probable, 51% probable. As long as it's 51% probable, it's more likely to be true than not. If it's less than 51% probable, then it's less likely to be true than not, but you still can do it in degrees. Probability lies in degrees. And the way certainty works is, so I know this to be true, there's no doubt of it. Plausibility, well, this could be true, I don't know. Probability works like this. Based on everything else I think this is the answer. However, being human, I know there's a chance I'm wrong. And in fact, in the past, I've been proved to be wrong. Take one of the most celebrated examples in the history of science. Up until about the year 1600, most European scholars, the vast majority of European scholars, believed that the sun goes around the earth. By 1700, the vast majority of European scholars believed that the earth goes around the sun. Everything they had thought they knew prior to 1600 led them to believe that the sun went around the earth. By 1700, they'd begun thinking of some things in different ways, and now everything they thought they knew told them the alternative, probability. So, shifting from subjectivity and objectivity to plausibility, probability, and certainty. In subjectivity and objectivity, we have opinion versus fact. A simple dichotomy that places the things about which you can have opinion on one side and the things about which you can have certainty, fact, on the other side. The problem being that there's not a lot you can put in the objective side, the certain side, and most of our claims to knowledge lie somewhere between. With plausibility, probability, and certainty, we still have opinion and fact, but instead of having opinion versus fact, we have opinions about facts, where opinion becomes interpretation, and fact becomes evidence or data or information. So instead of opinions versus facts, opinions about facts, interpretations of evidence, interpretations of data. This, to my way of thinking, is the essence of the scientific method, of scientific reasoning. At its heart, science is a way of knowing the world that accepts the basic limitations of what it means to be human. To be human is to be confronted with, for all intents and purposes, inevitability of uncertainty. There are a handful of things about which we can, in fact, achieve certainty, know for certain. But about most other things, we can't. All we're left with is what we think we know, based on everything else we know. Probability. Now, back to subject and object again. Instead of treating some questions as questions that you can investigate scientifically and some that you can't, why not apply this method to all questions, whether they be questions about the natural world, or questions about ethics, or questions about art? This method, this way of knowing, this essence of science, seems to me to be the way to go. And I think that brings us to science in the core. Science has a very small place in the core in one sense, in terms of the courses where scientific ideas are at the center of things. But it seems to me that this idea about scientific reasoning lies at the very heart of the core. Accepting the inevitability of uncertainty and realizing that in most cases in life, what we're doing, whether we're investigating the natural world or politics or art, is saying, based on everything else I think I know, this is what I think the answer is. I'm probably wrong, but there it is. Fini.